is our crowd. Welcome everyone to what's the name of it?
How to play test.
How to play test games. All right, sweet. So we're assuming everybody in here is interested in maybe playing games, obviously, but also maybe interested in getting into the industry, doing playtesting professionally, or even just on your own leisure, just to maybe even if you're making games, learn how to play test games better or something like that. You know, whatever your fix is, right? But we can probably do a head count a little later to see what you guys are interested in. But I guess for now we can just start with introductions. My name is Ron Jones. I'm an independent game developer. I do play testing or QA testing at Tripwire Interactive, which is a game studio here in Atlanta. And I also run the Indie Cluster, which is an organization that helps provide opportunities for indie games. So we do a number of things like expo services and whatnot, but our, I guess, more relevant service is do QA for indie games. Mm-hmm. So I play games, I just do stuff. I'll pass it down to Matt.
Hey, I'm Matt Kanai. I'm principal technical artist at Believer. I spent 7 years at Hi-Res earlier in my career as an environment artist, and then went to level design and tech art. Spent a couple years at Tripwire Interactive with this guy. Just a lovely time. And then went to Industrial Light and Magic for a couple years and landed at Believer. I also moonlit in indie studio. We spent 14 years on an indie game that shipped a couple years back called Hanako Honor and Blade.
Hey, hello everyone, I'm Aaron Ware. I worked at Hi-Res Studios for 6 years. 4 of those years working as a operation admin and customer support, and spending the rest as a QA analyst.
Hello everyone, I am an associate gameplay engineer at Alchemy Labs. I started my job this year, so I'm still within my first year in the game industry, but I'm also active in the International Game Developer Association Foundation, and I'm also the Game Awards Future Class member for this year. So, hello. If drainage is getting to me, so I might be talking a little, I'm sorry.
Awesome. Alrighty, so I'll probably open it up to what the panelists might want to chat about as far as their experience in interacting with you guys. But I think we could probably just start with a more of a general question. So I'm saying this as I'm looking at all the questions, but I haven't actually picked one to ask. I can just, I guess, start the conversation with why is giving good feedback so crucial to a game developer? And we can start off on the other end.
Hello. Giving good feedback is number one to a game developer a lot of times, especially me coming from the side of engineering, which is side I delve in, because a lot of times I know exactly how my code works. I know exactly how the mechanics works. And obviously you can just read my brain and know how the game works as well. Of course, that's not true. So, and having good feedback, seeing the steps that you took to get to that bug or issue, usually when I have a lot of back and forth talks with the QA at the company I work at, it's a lot of, okay, so how did you get to that bug? Because I'm not going to just get to that bug naturally, because again, I made the mechanic, so I know exactly how it's supposed to work. But talking to someone else, seeing enough perspectives is very helpful for engineers and the game developers in general.
So one of the things about giving good feedback is like really good communication. And my time at Hi-Res, one of the things we used was Confluence and Jira. This allowed us to properly documentate all the bugs and issues we would come across, and allow other team members to take a look at. So like, if we found an issue that required a gameplay programmer to take a look into, they would eventually get to it, and majority of the time they would reach out to me for a little bit more information. So yeah, we just get together, get in the game, just keep repeating the bug until we can like eventually narrow down what's leading to this issue. So yeah, just good communication, working together, proper way to give good feedback.
Yeah, I think too, making sure to give honest and objective feedback too. Like, it's one thing, of course everyone wants to feel good about their ideas and their games and everything, but being able to take, harsh and objective feedback and but also being fair with your teammates, and understanding that no one person has the answers to every possible challenge that everyone's going to encounter during a project. And sometimes the most harsh feedback is the best feedback to get you over a hump or get you over a plateau to a higher quality bar than you could have hit otherwise. And sometimes that feedback comes from like really surprising sources, and it's important when you're taking feedback too to take that on the same plane. Doesn't matter what someone's title is, what corner of the industry or not the industry that they come from, what kind of gamer they are, but understanding that there's useful nuggets in every piece of feedback that you get, but also there's a balance because you can't make everyone happy either.
Most definitely, totally agree with that. All right, I need you guys to smile real quick. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. I think one thing that I didn't necessarily understand until like being in the QA role is like how like necessary playtesting, quality assurance, QA testing, that position, that role is to the game development process, right? Even if you don't have a designated person, even if no one's calling it that, it's half of this system that we call game development, or the idea of creating anything, right? At any point, even if you are, even if you're driving a car for the first time, you're initially given directions or saying, hey, this is how you turn the wheel, this is what you press the pedal and everything. You are testing whatever it is that someone is giving you, that anyone is instructing you. You're turning the wheel and you're noticing if it's not doing anything because you're not actually going forward. You're pushing on the pedal to see your speed, you're calculating your velocity, how it feels on your body weight and everything like that. And that happens so naturally for us as humans. I think there's, you can look up as far as like gamification or the act of play and how we kind of learn how to go through life essentially. And testing, play testing, or just interacting with our environment and learning from that is a crucial part of it. So when you look at game development process, or any kind of like tech space, that role of quality assurance testing is essentially just making sure what we want to happen is actually happening. As the developers are continuing to push things out, this is what we want to happen, this is what we want, we need to make sure someone is coming around and saying, okay, we actually succeeded what we went out to do. So yeah, and it's definitely a lot more fun than some people make it. You can have a lot of fun with the studio, but also if you have, not necessarily developers, but if you have a mindset where, you are just doing the job and people don't respect that role of it, it can be a nightmare because you're literally just doing the thing, and people don't really kind of respect the position. So if you're getting into the industry, I would just say make sure wherever you are getting hired or wherever you're putting that service, make sure they respect the role and understand how important it is. But for yourself, I think that it could be pretty rewarding if you kind of learn how to navigate the space. But yeah, did I just speak too much? Or did that make sense? Okay. Cool, so we can kind of do maybe a head count or just kind of read the room a little bit. How many people here are developing a game?
Do I count?
Alright. Cool, okay, nice little handful. Cool, well, shout out to you guys. I would love to get a chance to play if I haven't already. How many people are trying to get into game industry? Okay, nice, pretty decent. I'm assuming as far as like getting a job in the industry, right? And how many people here just like playing games and have like their own opinions about these games, right? Okay, cool, so that counts for everybody. I was waiting to see when people are gonna raise their hands. But yeah, cool, so it seems about, a third of everything I called out. So yeah, different interests, but definitely I think the playtesting aspect is incredibly important, even if you're not trying to get a position in a QA role, as a QA role, but when you are developing your own game, you are essentially your own playtester, right? You have to kind of put in that code, put in your art, and make sure it's actually working right. You might not think about it, but you will if your game gets pretty large and it kind of takes up too much time to just, go back and keep making sure what you did is doing the thing, you know what I'm saying? So we can open up for questions in a little bit here, but we can probably ask a couple more questions for the panel to, I guess, pick their brain about their experience. I have another question here. What positions that you have, or here's a better one. What's one thing that you think, from your QA position, what's one thing that you think other QA testers should know moving forward? Like, what's the one quality or what's the one lesson that you learned that made your job better? I guess I can start this time. I guess there's a number of good, skill sets or skills to have. I think the biggest thing that impacted me the most was learning how to find certain things, like learning that a bad thing isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Learning how to keep running into a wall, and then eventually something will pop out. Some studios don't really, or I guess some developers might not necessarily like that approach, as far as like ad hocing and kind of doing your own thing, but that's honestly how I play games, not necessarily following the rules. So I had to kind of learn how to basically go off and do my own thing, and that's often how I would realize that there's no collision on the walls, or this specific color isn't necessarily compatible with certain people's eyes because some people are colorblind. So essentially, kind of thinking outside the box is really how I cracked the code for my QA career path, and understanding that it's not, basically players aren't going to play your game how you want them to play your game. And that kind of opened me up to learn what can be a bug, what is just like a feedback issue, how to, how to write my thoughts down, how to document and communicate to the actual people that are making the game so they can make the best game that they can make.
Yeah, excuse me. I'm not from a QA background, but I'll speak from because there's different types of playtests. Not every playtest is made the same, and really the most important thing is that you're regularly playtesting really as frequently as possible. If you're not playtesting, you're making mistakes. If you're just implementing forever, you don't really know, does it even work? You could design something that you think is perfect on paper, but it might not translate to the engine or the game. So, the playtesting for bugs is one thing, and that's super important, and the better a QA team is, the better the game is when it comes out, the more stable it'll be. But there's also design playtest and feel playtest, where some set of designs is executed, an engineer implements a design, you want to make sure that it feels right and proper to what the design spec was. And sometimes it goes completely against that grain, or you make some mistake that turns into a feature that is something awesome. You should be doing all those types of playtests and have really clear objectives on what you're trying to get out of the playtest. You're not just really playing the game to play the game. You can have fun while you're testing, and you should, but you should have clear goals on what you're trying to extract. If it's to find bugs, then make sure they're documented, and you have the reproductions of how you got to the bug documented. If you're doing a feel or a design playtest, make sure you're getting player surveys and player feedback from your team, so across the board, are you getting a consensus on if a feature works or not. In tech, I do performance playtests quite a lot, just to make sure how's frame rate when gameplay is super crazy. You're not necessarily playing the game, just hey, let's get the most people that the game supports in an area. Let's like all fire our ultimates at the same time and see like does it hold up on a Switch or does it hold up on a min-spec laptop? And like those are really important tests too. I'm trying to think if there's any other kinds. We'll go with those.
I hate testing on Switch.
Don't we all?
But yeah, going more on that. Oh, I should have said this earlier. When I was QA for Hi-Res, I QA'd for Paladins and Rogue Company. I also spent a lot of time on social media pages, just reading player comments, especially on Discord, where we had like specific channels where players could come in and report bugs that they run into. And like day after day, I just go through that channel, just looking for any bugs that I could try replicating or just investigate, see what could have caused that. And majority of them I usually end up writing a JIRA, which was like our ticketing system for documentation. And later into the day, we usually had a set of playtests we would do. The first playtest was, as you were saying earlier, like just looking for specific things like, okay, hey, we implemented this new mechanic, let's test it a little bit, we're gonna spam it as many times as we can, see what happens. After we did those kind of play tests, then we would just do the free play test where you just play the game as if you were one of our players. And that time I spent looking at all those bugs and figuring out what led to them. Humans are very interesting creatures. You can give them a list of instructions to do, and they will do everything in their powers to not follow those instructions. So when it came to those kind of free play tests, I just had to just ignore what I was told and just go crazy. And surprisingly, or I shouldn't say really surprisingly at some point, but I would run into bugs and document them, let our team leads know, and they'll ask me, how the hell did you find this? And I'm just, I don't know. You can watch the recording. But yeah, that was a lot of fun doing that.
So I was never got into a QA position or anything, but I was a solo developer for a while, making games and game jams. So I was talking about QA for stuff like that, because I feel like a lot of people in this room was similar to where I was and still am. So when it came to like testing, especially making like a single player game, it's harder because I'm all like, I know everything. I made it, I solo developed it, I put on my itch.io, all these things. And that's why I want to say, find a Discord, find some friends, make sure you're the only one testing it. Because you develop it, your mind is just automatically clouded. And it's just automatically going to avoid some things because you know about them. So please like give it to a friend, give it to a Discord group. There are several groups you can find online who like indie cluster that can help you with your game that you are making, especially if you're solo developing it, you don't have like the affordability for a whole QA system. There are plenty of people online, me included, who will love to just play your simple indie game, who will love to just play it and go through it and break it as many times as possible. So I highly suggest, if you're solo developing a game and you get to a point where it's playable, send it out to people to ask you to be play testers. Maybe give them some cool things from the game if they do that, and it'll make your whole development experience 10 times better.
Right, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Okay, I think I want to ask this one question and then we will open it up for audience questions. So, I just had the question in my head. Okay, what are some tips and tricks that you would advise people, or advise someone playing the game or play testing the game, some tips and tricks for them to communicate to the developer, or if they find a bug, or if you find one of your own bugs, like what do you think can help that transition from finding something wrong with the game and then whoever's developing it to fix it? Does that make sense? Okay.
Details are amazing. So basically, not only saying what's wrong, but why it feels that way. I give a very small example I can give for our VR game we're making. When performance is down in the VR game, is very, very bad because your headset's looking directly at it. So not only I was playing well, when I set everything on fire in this game, the frame rate dropped to like 10. And the reason why this is a horrible experience because it's headache inducing. This is actually preventing me from continue playing the game. So, and I said exactly how I did it. I made this effect go on over and over and over and over and over again to a certain amount of times, and just giving those exact details on how I did that was very helpful. But also, we all have screen recorders now. You can record the bug happening, so you can show proof that, look, this is exactly how I did it. This is exactly how it happened. So, and also another key thing was just also quality of life feedback would be good too. So, for example, when working on the game for my company, we had a feedback circle when we made it in person. And I just said, I hate this one sound because it's anxiety inducing. And it actually causes anxiety. It's not supposed to do that. And that's not a breaking feature, but because it's something that's for quality of life, I think that would be something useful for to improve in the game. And that was actually a feature we eventually have removed. So, yeah, so quality of life details and recordings.
Yeah, definitely recordings. We mostly use like OBS to record any like gameplay that we did, especially when investigating bugs. And I keep bringing up Jira because it's really useful. So like whenever you have QA for your team or just playtesting your game in general, just having some type of ticketing system comes very handy. Yeah, when it comes to bringing the issue to the appropriate person, providing like a summary of what the issue is, providing repro steps that lead into the issue comes very handy.
As in reproduction stuff.
Yeah, and they're just like, simple little steps of like, hey, load up the game. All right, queue for this match. All right, now you're in the match, select this champion or character, select this loadout, do the specific action, take notice that this issue is happening now. Simple stuff like that. But either way, it usually leads to the person that you send this to will eventually like hit you back up asking for more details, which should be expected. The more information they have, the better they can like narrow down the issue and resolve it as soon as possible.
Yeah, kind of like my dream bug Jira. I'm trying to think of what I want in there. I like videos, but if we're in like trying to get ready to cert for console or something, like I don't have time to watch videos sometimes. I just want, like Unreal has a command to do, you type like bug it, and then you give a description, it generates a screenshot of a copy of the log, and then it has a command for you that will take you straight to the coordinates of where the bug is. Like I want to be able to get to it and then follow the reproduction steps to recreate it. So if it's like, hey, in this spot, I get bugs sometimes, they're like, hey, performance is down in this spot. I'm like, well, I think there's QA can really help themselves by just like picking the brains of different departments and figuring out, hey, what are the first steps like you take once you get a bug? Like what do you have to go do next? And are there things that they can save by just including in the bug? So like coordinates are one thing, screenshots and the reproduction, so like that's pretty standard. But if it's like a performance bug, like having frame rate on screen or writing down like which of the, is it CPU or GPU, and kind of explaining more of like what's going on a little more under the hood. And it's not like you have to know how to code or whatever, it's just understanding, hey, tech art, you're doing performance, I know you're gonna go look at frame rate, you're gonna go like take this capture next, like can I provide a CSV or that information ahead of time? And like sometimes that might save you an hour because it's already in the bug. You don't have to go track down the location and do it all from scratch redundantly when QA already found it.
Yeah, knowing the person that you're reaching out to about the issue helps a lot, because not only just their job being tech artists or gameplay programmers, but they could also have like their own preferences of what they need to locate the issue. So get to know your coworkers.
Most stuff. I can add to that a little bit. So I was on a panel like this a while back with a coworker of mine named Kurt, who's a programmer, and what he said something that has always stuck with me. He basically broke down how, developers and even testers, like we kind of own, or we're human, we have emotions and whatnot, but when a tester puts in a bug that's like, hey, this is an issue I found, and they'll like just ignore it, like I actually kind of, and I've invested into this, so I care a little bit about it. But just like developers, they obviously care about the game or whatever feature they're implementing. So when it comes to finding an issue, basically framing the issue of the reproduction steps as in like, not necessarily this is what you did wrong. It's kind of like, this is what I expected, and this is this is what I expected, and why what's happening is different than what I expected. So you're kind of like taking, it's like you're not pointing fingers, or you're taking out the individual out of it, but you're breaking it down to a system that had expected or unexpected results. I think that kind of helps people not feel so triggered or not have an issue with how you're approaching them with an issue. Obviously, that's a little bit more in a professional setting, but also, our Twitch channel for the Indie Cluster, I stream on Mondays. We have like a Monday night playtest where I stream indie developers games as they're being developed, whether it's demos or I hop on itch.io and just pick a couple games to kind of give some feedback. And what I've noticed as far as reaching out to them, letting them know I'm either about to stream their game or I already did, and they can look at the video, they've always appreciated the post, just because having any eyes on your game is like is a plus, right? As a developer, but also getting that feedback, being able to see somebody interact with something that you've created is incredibly rewarding, and also helpful, because you're actually trying to get better as a developer. You want your product to get better. So kind of being honest, as was what was said earlier, but also like understanding you're talking to a human being who actually cares about. Important to keep in mind. We can talk about how people sometimes just don't really care, giving a 1-star review and just saying this sucks. Like, thanks, appreciate it. Not much you can do about that. But I think the communication aspect, when dealing with someone else that's not yourself, is definitely important. There's a huge player community that loves indie games and even understands the idea of supporting developers, because it is hard out there. But sometimes people forget that me being a solo developer, I'm not going to make the same type of game that Bungie or Rockstar is going to make. So comparing those, it's a little unfair. But yeah. I think that makes sense. Cool. So unless you guys have any other things that you think might be critical for this position, I could open up the floor.
To the solo developers out there, when you do feedback in your itch.io page, fill out a Google form. So you can ask, and make them open-ended questions. So you can ask some things they liked, some things they didn't like. Having that Google form, that way you can always look back on the feedback. It's always great.
And you can track trends over time, like having it with the graphs that it makes, so you can see, 6 months later, where they're saying, do you like this? It might be a 1 the first test and like a 4 the next test. Now you're making progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was mentioned earlier, but as a developer, don't be afraid to test. I know, even as an artist, you don't want people to see your stuff until you come out monetize and stuff like that. You don't want people stealing your ideas and stuff like that. But in this industry, especially as an indie, you need that public perception, or you need other people to validate it publicly. You need to start building your community. You need others, basically. It can't just be you in a basement until it's ready to release.
Yeah, you really have to like treat your own game as you're like a scientist in the lab and try to detach yourself from it a little bit, or even assess it. Like a trick I used on my game, because I was so close to it, was so personal to me, that was like I had to kind of like, all right, this playtest, I'm going to pretend like I'm someone that doesn't like me very much.
Yeah.
And it kind of worked. Sometimes I got like too critical, but it was a helpful practice. And then it helps taking feedback too, of like, they don't know what your intent is. Like they don't know what you're trying to accomplish, and they can't project forward to possibly know what you think your game's going to be a year from now. They only know like what they see is what they get.
Right.
And
right.
sometimes like, because you're in the development like tunnel, especially on like solo projects and indie stuff, it's hard to like lose sight of the feedback. And like I've got defensive so many times, like earlier, the later the project went, was the more it's like, hey, they just want to have fun, or not have like a janky experience.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, it does take some, I guess some mental health checks to make sure a lot of the filth other people might throw your way when you're going through that process. But if you're able to kind of, you know how to understand or how to navigate some of the garbage ideas out there. Some people just want your game to be like their game, or some people want your game to be like Halo, or like if you can navigate past a lot of that and kind of maybe understand some of the critiques, not necessarily doing what somebody said would be cool, like adding another gun or making certain things faster, but understanding why, understanding why somebody is critiquing that part of your gameplay experience. I think that can overall help you kind of find a better balancing, or a better way to balance your mechanics. But cool. So I guess we can open up to questions. I know there's a number of different ideologies in here, at least when it comes to playtesting, but I'm very curious to hear some of you guys' perspectives on what playtesting means to you.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Can we let questions be, and like, they don't have to be about playtesting?
Sure.
And we want this time to be as useful to everybody as possible.
Yeah, we have
So
a pretty
just-
diverse panel too,
yeah.
so whatever is floating your boat.
Got things off.
What's up, bro?
Aside from maybe like a release candidate for production or something, where do you find yourself spending the most time playtesting in the game development lifecycle?
That's a good question, because you're testing different aspects for different purposes, right? Obviously, if you're asking for a release candidate, you're testing, make sure it's public facing, making sure no last minute bugs to pop up, making sure all your content is in there or your features in there, making sure your certifications, so that's Xbox, PlayStation, that's all their qualifications are there. So that's where really where it's going to be heavy. I'd probably say, honestly, I'd probably say in the middle of the project, because that's where content is continually to be being added, and you also want to make sure whatever was in there yesterday is still in there and it's not that broken. And also design changes are implementing at the same time, so sometimes you got to change the underlying system. So that's probably where the most maybe sporadic or bug creating mess is going to happen. But I guess like I said, it's depending on what you're testing. Probably the release candidate stage is where you're testing the most of the same thing, you know, making sure that the controller works every time you turn the game on. So you're going to be doing that 50 times a day. But in the beginning stages, you almost don't even know what kind of game you're making. So you're kind of testing this, then you're kind of testing that. But yeah, does that kind of answer the question?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Amen.
Can I get your opinion on certain devs saying that playtesting is just a stepping stone into the industry? Because I feel like that's
that
a little
question so
different.
much.
Okay, 'cause I saw some of that on LinkedIn, I was like, I don't know, but can I get your opinion on that?
Yeah, I've heard that so much, and I feel like it depends. I've been thinking about it a lot, because I literally like just saw a big thing that's going on. I can't remember what studio it is. It doesn't matter. It was something about like QA be considered non-development, which is wrong. quality means assuring quality. Your game is not quality without QA, period. I feel like, at first, I'm a everything's a craft kind of person. Like, personally, that matters a lot, and QA is a craft as much as anything else in the industry. And a lot of times it can be a stepping stone. A lot of people do go into QA hoping to go into something else later, but I also think that their QA is a career path as well, and a very valid one. And like, some of the most talented people I've worked with were like QA leads at some of the places I've been. And it's like, if you want it to be a stepping stone, that's your career goal, and that's your way in the door, that's totally valid. If you want to be QA for your career, that's totally valid too. And I feel very strongly about that.
Definitely. Not enough people, I think, validate, like I mentioned, as far as validate QA as being a needed role, as well as a role that has its own career path.
I'd like to say something about this, someone who's not from the QA's perspective, but I hear that a lot, and that I heard that, going and trying to get in the game industry myself. And the one thing I always ask myself, yeah, it's a stepping stone, but there's also a lot of associate roles and like junior roles and entry roles where I actually want to do. And if I become a QA tester, am I really going to be passionate about it? Am I really going to be serious about QA that's actually going to help the game? Which I could be, I might, but I know me personally, I already didn't like doing QA as an IT developer. I was going to be a horrible QA for game developer. So I was like, let me just try to find associate roles, or maybe just stick with what I'm doing until I find the role that's right for me. And I know that's very hard, because everyone's trying to find a job in the industry. That's why I always suggest finding a job outside and getting the industry in the career you want to be. Because you don't want, QA requires passion, thought, and creativity, just like any other field in the game industry. And if you don't have the passion for it, it's very hard to do.
Yeah, my time in QA, I've seen a lot of people either continue their path in QA or have branched off to other disciplines, like whether that be level design, programming, and for myself, I was doing more art-related things. So one of the things my manager did for me was to get me in talks with the art director for Paladins, and we talked a couple of times, and I helped out a lot with playtesting art content to the point where he just hit me up one day and was just like, hey, you want to do some art for the game? Sure. So to answer your question, like, yeah, QA, I would definitely consider it like a stepping stone to multiple disciplines within the gaming industry. And yeah, don't let anyone tell you you're not a dev in that. Yeah.
Facts.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Most definitely. Yeah, I definitely do kind of consider it a stepping stone. I mean, it's always kind of been an industry, damn, what's the term?
What, stigma?
No, I forgot the term. It's a path that opens up. Geez, I'm just saying words right now.
Gateway?
Entry-level position. Geez, sorry. Entry-level position, and I think that's still pretty accurate. But like was mentioned, it's his own career. So if you're gonna do it, you know what you're getting into and everything like that. And that's kind of how we also advertise for this workshop. We started doing workshops to help teach people how to do it, how professionals kind of do it. So, and we do that every winter and summer. And our workshop is actually next Tuesday, so we're excited about that.